It's time for the Volquest Mailbag Podcast, answering your questions from the General's quarters every week, right here on Volquest.
Good Thursday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com Mailbag Podcast, presented by our good friends at Smoky Mountain Organics. Check them out online at SmokyMountainOrganics.com, or you can visit one of their 4 locations, including their location in Knoxville, down on Kingston Pike, just below Westtown Mall and across from Trader Joe's. At Smoky Mountain Organics, East Tennessee's most trusted health and wellness store. With Austin Price and Rob Lewis, I'm Brent Hubbs. Glad to have you along with us on this Thursday edition of the podcast. It's the mailbag installment, which means we'll jump right into your questions. Plenty of them to get to today, and we'll start out of the gate with Sam Smith, 2233, who wants to know the following. This Tennessee baseball team is the best team regardless of sport at UT since when? His second question is, in your opinion, which football player will get drafted first and who has the best pro career? Let's go with the second question first. Who out of this class between Velus Jones and Alante Taylor, Butler and Cade Mays, Rob, who comes off the board first?
Golly, I mean, the mocks that I have seen, it's Velus, excuse me. I've been doing it to him for 3 years, but based on the nature of the position, I kind of thought it would be Alante after the way he ran. So, I mean, because the quarterback's so valuable, I'll be a little surprised if it's not Alante. But again, several mocks I've seen Velus as high as the third round. I don't know about you guys.
Who has the best career in your opinion, long term? Who plays the longest?
I think Cade.
Okay.
I think Cade.
AP?
I'll go Alante Taylor.
First drafted?
Because I don't know about that. To me, that's because once you get to the third or fourth round, Hubbard, a lot of it goes into need and that type of thing. Sometimes it's best available, sometimes it's need, depending on the team. So I don't know about that, but I think I just think he'll play a long time because he's versatile enough to play multiple different positions in the defensive secondary. What was his first question?
Tennessee's baseball team is the best team regardless of sport at UT since who? Since what team?
The Chris Lofton, Juwan Smith, that group.
That went to the Elite 8?
No, they didn't go to the Elite 8. They got cut out in the Sweet 16. The Elite 8 team
was a really good Louisville team.
JP Prince group.
Yeah. All right. Rob Lewis?
I'll go with the Admiral Grant team. I thought that team was better. I mean, I love me some Chris Lofton, but I thought the 18-19 team that got beat by Purdue in the Sweet 16 was the best team that I've seen over there this century, regardless of sport.
Yeah, I think it's a little early to tell.
Too soon.
I mean, yeah, they did, and I think the question with this baseball team, I mean, you're in a marathon here, not a sprint. Now, this team is throwing it better than anybody could ever imagine. They've been dominant on the mound. We'll see. I mean, ask that question again in late May and see where that argument stacks up with where it's at compared to right now. I mean, there are 7 regular season SEC series left for this team to play. It's 21 more conference games to play before you even think about postseason play. So you got 7 weeks of baseball before you even think about playing in any kind of postseason tournament. Long ways to go, but obviously a great start for this baseball team. All Recruiting wants to know update on Bryson Sanders after receiving an Ole Miss prediction, chances with Jeremiah Cobb, Cameron Seldon, and Roderick Robinson Jr.
I mean, Tennessee's still right there with Bryson Sanders. I don't think that he's some lock for Ole Miss. We'll see. I mean, I think Bryson Sanders is just fine. If Tennessee didn't get him, I wouldn't sweat it, though. Does Tennessee want him? Sure. But, again, I think there are several offensive linemen that are right around the same level. And so, if you go hard for him, if you don't get him, they'll get somebody that's pretty similar. You want him because of the appearance of an in-state kid going elsewhere is, not a good look, especially when you're in position with several of these other kids in the state. Cameron Seldon, Tennessee likes him a lot. We'll see how his recruitment starts to take shape. I expect him to get more and more and more interest, and I expect him to take more visits. And we'll see what twists and turns are down the road. Who are the other ones? Roderick Robinson. Recruiting him in it. One said the leader.
And then
Who else?
Jeremiah Cobb.
Same thing with Cobb.
Yeah, I mean, Robinson's got to get to campus and see Tennessee if that's going to be a factor. I mean, all the West Coast schools are starting to really jump up in his recruitment, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so that he's got to get here to see that. He's been to Cal a couple times. USC's just offered, so the West Coast is starting to take off a little bit for him. Tennessee was in there early, and obviously he's liked Tennessee for a while. But to me,
It's like Noah Rogers. I mean, until he gets here,
right,
it's kind of hard for me to see them as a real, once he gets here, that changes in a hurry, in my opinion. But, as of now.
Yeah, he's got to get here. This is from Panic Ball. Where's the development of these following offensive linemen that Pruitt signed? And more importantly, does this current staff think of their abilities? Do they fit in the system? Prospects of helping the program in the future? William Parker, R.J. Perry, James Robinson, Amari McNeil, Dominic Bailey. I'm not trying to be cruel here or harsh. I mean, William Parker is the youngest of that crew in terms of kind of where he's at. Maybe he can develop into something, but R.J. Perry does not seem to be a factor at all at the tackle spot right now. McNeil's not been a factor on the defensive side. Same for Bailey. James Robinson doesn't seem to be a factor either. So I think none of those guys have made early noise in spring, and we'll see what happens. But right now, I don't see those guys factoring in to the two deep and being a real factor for Tennessee this fall.
What he said.
Don't you think that's an underrated storyline for this team? I mean, we talk about depth on the offensive line, and a year ago or a year and a half ago, you would have looked at R.J. Perry and James Robinson in particular as Parker was just getting here as an early enrollee, but those two guys were two guys. If and they still may work out. I'm with you, However. I don't need to be harsh, but those are two guys that could have been big pieces of the puzzle. Maybe not this year, but next year if they were just solid developmental prospects.
Yeah, I mean, you look at a guy like R.J. Perry, and I mean, he's got the frame and things to work with, and same for James Robinson from a physicality standpoint. But, I just look at where they're at right now. The opportunities have been there for them previously. They haven't made any noise. There's obviously a huge opportunity at tackle. There was a year ago, and R.J. Perry couldn't be a factor. And right now, he's not a name that comes up in the conversation at tackle. And, yeah, I mean, for whatever reason, those guys that's just been miss. They appear to be misses. Again, we've seen guys turn it on late in their career. We'll see if these guys can turn it on. We'll see if anything happens with them. But to this point, halfway through spring, those guys are not names that you're hearing, behind the scenes or on the front line in terms of guys talking about them, in any way, shape, or form. So we'll see.
And you're right. Like Parker is the one guy, you just be like, technically he's still at the end of his true freshman year. You forget about that when they get here early and you see him last spring, you see him all last fall. But, in theory, he's still a young kid. And honestly, I think he needed, not that he's, I think he's just he's a kind of a cut up. I think he probably needed to mature a little bit off the field anyway. Again, great kid. So when I say mature, that's not a bad thing. Just, learning how to work and do things off the field. The rest of those, I mean, don't you feel like that they're a possibility for the portal? If they elect to be.
Yeah, right. They certainly could be. I mean, when people say any names to watch, I mean that would be in a group of guys that you would take a look at it as possibilities out there, and we'll see. I mean, the thing about it, the adjustment when you talk about maturity, the adjustment to college is that it's a job to play football.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it's a job to play any sport, and that's. I mean, Rob, you talk about this with in basketball with Brandon Huntley Hatfield, and it's not that Brandon's immature. He's a problem. It's just the work that's required, the grind that's required to work year round to play is something that they haven't experienced. Those guys haven't experienced before in sports. And for some guys, it's a longer adjustment period than it is for others.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this in both sports. I mean, when you've been literally, with few exceptions, just about everybody that we cover in football or basketball has been the best player on their team in whatever sport going back to kindergarten, whether they work hard at it or not. And, it's just a different way of life. What you get here and get smacked in the face with, everybody is as good as you are. And what separate with very few exceptions. Eric Berry if he'd been the laziest dude on the team, could have probably still been the best player. There aren't many of those guys. Once you get here, you've got to put in the work.
Yeah, and certainly, and particularly at the line of scrimmage, because those are places where you've just pushed kids around and dominated without a lot of technique and a lot of work, and you don't realize there's a development sometimes that you need to have, for some guys it takes a while to figure that out. So we'll see what happens with them.
Really no different than working at Volquest Hubs. I mean, when Ben and Eric came in, Rob and you smacked them in the mouth, and they didn't know how to handle it.
You're the one smacking them around. I mean, I can't believe you made those guys pick up your groceries every Friday like that. I mean, that was rough. How many times?
If that's the case, I'm gonna have them come mulch my yard.
I was gonna say, if you hear a buzzing sound right now, that's Eric Kane mowing Austin's yard.
That's right. Ben's out there waxing the car right now. Little wax on, wax off for those guys. And Run wants to know, who do you have for the first loss in SEC play for the baseball team? Letdown game or Arkansas? I don't know. I mean, look,
they don't play Arkansas. They don't play Arkansas in the regular season.
No,
yeah.
they don't.
So he's saying they're not going to lose till the tournament.
Well, I mean, that's unrealistic. Yeah. I mean, my thing is like, I don't think they'll lose this weekend. I think they'll be really motivated because with a couple of wins, they can set a new record for most wins to start league play. So I think they'll be motivated. I don't. To me, like Georgia, Florida, one of those series, they'll trip up. And the question is,
maybe
who?
Mississippi State.
Yeah, which is the last series of the year.
Yeah, well, probably before then.
Yeah, my biggest thing would be like, how do they lose, Hubs? Do they lose because their bats go cold? Or do they lose because one of the pitchers finally wakes up from being unconscious? Because, I mean, they're all just like, both sides are playing and unbelievably well right now.
Well, I mean, it's baseball. And again, as I said earlier, there's 21 conference games left. They're not going 30-0 in league play. I mean, there's going to be.
And if they do, then they're sure not winning the national title. To me, you want them to lose a few. Like at some point, I mean,
there's going to be a night where you don't score a bunch of runs, you leave guys on base, and you find yourself in a one-run game late, and you give up a hit or a blown save. I mean, that's just baseball. That's just what's going to happen. Tony Rojas, eval after talking to him on Tuesday. Vols got a real shot there. Austin Price.
Yeah, they do. I mean, how do you not? I mean, if Tennessee, you saw his quote. I mean, Tennessee's the only school that's locked into the top three. So, like, if that's the case, and I'm just taking the kid at his word, then they definitely got a real shot at this kid. Doesn't mean they're going to get him, but it means that they're at least positioning themselves to be in it for the long haul. And he was blown away by the 2 days here. That was a random 2 days in the middle of spring, in the middle of the week. You know what I mean? Like, he did get that one-on-one time that you don't get if there's like 60 other kids here.
Sure.
But at the same time, like, it ain't like there's a big bunch of juice and vibe on campus that just goes, gotta, get him down here for a game in the fall, and then let that kind of marinate with him.
Who does something first? Zach Myers, Brandon Strocher, or Christian Conyers? I think Conyers is the last of those three because I don't think he's as close as the other two. But I don't have a timetable for the other two at this point.
I agree, and the other two, it's a coin flip because they both talked about doing something either April or May, and so it's.
Or they could do something
to go for it.
Right. Or they could do something in June or July. I mean, those things change all the time. So we'll see what happens. But they certainly appear to be further along in their timetable than Conyers does. Based on what you know today, who do you take in a one-season year between Joe Milton, Taven Jackson, and Nico? Rob, I don't think you can answer this question. I can't answer this question. I've never seen Nico, okay, and I've never seen Taven Jackson. So, I mean, Nico's the most talented of the three. Joe throws the best ball, has the strongest arm of the three. But I don't know. I mean, that's to me, that's an impossible question to answer.
I'll answer it this way. If it's close, multiple coaches have always told me, whether it be at the high school level, college level, whatever, if it's close, always go with the kid that you're going to have longer. So, like, if it's close, you're going to go with the younger kids. So that, takes Joe Milton out of play unless he's light years better than the other two.
Yeah. I agree with that.
And then at that point, like, you're going to play the best player. Like, all that NIL stuff aside, like, Josh Heupel ain't just throwing the guy out there. unless he's the guy, So, if again, unless Joe Milton is light years better, I'm always going to go with Taven Jackson or Nico. They're younger. They have a lot more time in your system.
Yeah. Megavols 98, Rob, to you. If Josh Heupel could only accomplish one of the three things next season, what would you choose? Beat Florida, win 9 regular season games, secure a top 5 recruiting class.
Wow, that's a good one. I would say secure a top 5 recruiting class, even though my knee-jerk reaction would be beat Florida. But for the long-term health of the program, I would say top 5 recruiting class.
Rob or Austin, I'm going to jump in here because I'm going to cheat. I'm going to say 2 because I think if you win 9 regular season games, that means you've beaten Florida, and I think that further secures you an opportunity to have a top 5 recruiting class. So how about I cheat? How about I cheat and take B?
They all work together, and especially the first 2 things you just talked about. You can beat Florida, get 9 wins, and not get a top 5 class.
True,
but the likelihood is, you're not getting to 9 wins if you don't beat the Gators. Like I think for Tennessee to take a step, which means win 8, 9 or more, they have to run the table in September. They've got to beat Pitt. They got to beat Florida. They got to go into the bye week in 1st October undefeated, which means they're coming out of the bye week undefeated, going to Baton Rouge. And at that point, even if you lose to Florida, Georgia, Alabama, and LSU, and maybe even hiccup, you're still getting the 8, like in my opinion. So you've got that month of September's huge.
Yeah, I agree. And the question is, can you beat Florida at home? Can you finally beat them? You weren't last year, but so many times you've been better than them, and at the time they played last year, Tennessee wasn't better than them, but so many times they have been, and Tennessee's just failed to get it done.
Well, you have to see it to believe it, Hubs.
I've got to believe it to see it to believe it, and everything else in between.
Just remember what Charlie said in the Santa Claus movie: seeing is believing, and believing is seeing.
Thanks. I appreciate those words of wisdom today. That's outstanding. Peyton for Preds wants to know, where do the Vols stand with Deshaun Bishop and Caleb Herring?
Well, Deshaun Bishop doesn't seem like he's in any rush. He just visited Purdue. Caleb Herring, Tennessee's in, is in a good a spot as they can be. Period.
Clearly, Tennessee struggled in short yardage situations last year. Was that a lack of a power back? Can Justin Williams-Thomas be that guy? What's the short yardage issue in your opinion, Rob Lewis?
I thought it was offensive line. They did not have a power back. That did not help. But against the good teams, everybody had problems running against Alabama and Georgia. But against the good teams on the schedule, I just didn't think they could move people.
Get under center.
I agree with that too. But I hate it. I hate that more than anything in football. At high school, college, I hate being in shotgun in short yardage. It drives me bananas.
Does me too.
What does that drive you more bananas, or taking a knee out of the shotgun late in games?
That doesn't.
That doesn't bother me. I don't care. They can snap it to the punter and take a knee. That doesn't bother me. To anything to do when it's 3rd and short, particularly when the college officials, nobody's blowing a play dead. They're letting you rugby push it as far as you want to, right? So put your quarterback under center and put your big lineman back behind him at the fullback position and just push. Just push. That would be in terms of 3rd and inches or 4th and inches, that would be my recommendation for short yardage. I'm a big believer in that, but that's just me. I do think a bigger back would help. And I think quarterback runs would help as well. Further growing the quarterback run game there. So we'll see. Artful Dodger 7, it's out there that Trevor Duncan wants to decide something by the end of spring practices. Where do the Vols stand if a decision is coming that quickly? You talked to him, Austin. Is that timetable really accurate end of spring?
I think before he breaks high school academically for the summer break.
So you think at the latest in May?
I think May, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
The latest.
Where's Tennessee there?
I think they're in a good spot. I think he's going to try to get back to Virginia Tech and Tennessee again. He's going to be at Vanderbilt this weekend. His brother is a walk-on at Virginia Tech. I don't think that's some kind of he may end up there, but I don't think that's some well, his brother's there, so he's going to go there type thing. And Tennessee's recruiting him the hardest. He hears routinely from Glenn Ellerby, Rodney Gardner, and Josh Heupel, and I'm talking like basically every day of the week he's hearing from somebody on this staff.
Yeah. Volunteered 87. Question for you, Austin. When are you dropping the Rojas video that you filmed earlier this week? Ha ha ha. If Ben McKee is on this podcast, he's not. He's out washing Austin's car right now. Maybe we can get Austin to holler out the window at him. Does he know the metrics on average number of runs between Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday games over the last few seasons? Logic would say more runs as the weekend goes on and teams move down their pitching pecking order, but I'm curious if it plays out that way. I think it depends on how you handle a Friday night pitcher. Do you push a Friday night pitcher and get a team into their bullpen? If you get the starter out on Friday night for a lot of teams and make them work their bullpen, then traditionally your runs go up. And traditionally Sunday games have been higher scoring games than others because teams run out of pitching. That's just, that's kind of the tradition of it. But a lot of that hinges on how you affect the Friday night starter. That's the biggest benefit, Rob, that Tennessee's got of their pitchers right now is they got guys going into the 6th, 7th, and 8th inning every night. And they got a complete game performance out of the kid on Sunday. I mean that's the difference for Tennessee right now is they're not nobody's getting to their bullpen early, which changes their fortune of everything. I mean Tennessee had everybody at their disposal Sunday afternoon at Vanderbilt if they needed them, which is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't follow it as closely as Ben does, but as somebody who watches them and just enjoys it, the pitching this year is just it's lights out. I mean, last year it was all once you got past Tidwell, it was always it seemed like smoke and mirrors. You'd have to score a bunch of runs. I mean, this year, I mean, golly, they could have. Against Vandy, could they have won every game if they scored 2 runs? Am I misremembering?
Yeah.
I mean,
3 runs.
They could average 2 runs a game and swept the series.
Yeah, they'd have had to score 3 on Saturday night.
I'm sorry, that's right.
Vanderbilt got 2 home runs.
They've given up 11 total runs the last 2 weekends.
It's ridiculous.
11. It's just stupid number. I mean, it's just a dumb number. I mean, it's crazy to think that that's where they are.
And 3 of those was similar to they start looking at the metrics of all that stuff, and they pulled Beam out at that Sunday game after he gave up that single. Then they bring in the reliever, and he gives up a 3-run bomb.
Yeah, that's exactly
much like they pulled in their one loss of the year. They pulled out Chase Burns against Texas, and then the bullpen gave up 4 or 5 more.
Yeah, they did. And and Tony Vitello said after that game he should have left Chase Burns in the game and let him go more and not had him on as hard of a pitch count as he did. Where does Tennessee stand with Sammy Brown? Sammy Brown's got some family in East Tennessee. He's got some ties to East Tennessee. He's been up here a couple of times, but I think Sammy Brown's going to be a long shot. Georgia's in that. Clemson's in that. Alabama's in that. He was at Michigan earlier this week and Alabama as well. I think he'll come back and see Tennessee. I think he's going to give Tennessee a legitimate look, but he's going to be an important prospect for a lot of teams around the conference, including the in-state Bulldogs, Clemson, where he's been multiple times, Alabama as well. So I think Tennessee will keep battling there, but I think that one's going to be a long shot ultimately to get Sammy Brown. Uncle Nico wants to know, the majority of football prospects that visit Tennessee absolutely rave about the visit and staff. Could you shed some light on what this particular staff is doing compared to previous staffs that have these kids amped up? Rob, how many people through the last 15 years have said publicly they had a bad visit?
I was getting ready to say, and I don't mean to
you can count on one hand.
Yeah, I don't mean to be a smart aleck, but I mean, virtually no kid that has gone anywhere had a bad visit. I mean, we all know former player. I have a really good buddy. It was a former player back in the 90s, and he took 5 visits to various schools and told me he was ready to commit after every school he visited. That's where he was going, on Monday after he got back. And I think a lot of kids are like that. I mean, you go to these places, everybody has phenomenal facilities. You're rolling out the red carpet. I mean, if you're on an official visit, you go eat, 3 or 4 great meals. You stay in a nice hotel. Nobody has a bad time with these visits.
No, they don't. I think this staff, though, Austin, when you look at them, I think with these guys, it's been about more than just football. It's not just been football 101 with them, which resonates with some kids. pretty well. I think, a lot of kids get some, pretty good one-on-one attention here. And I think this staff's doing a good job. I just think that I can't tell you who's done a bad job, who does a bad job, right? I mean,
it's correct. It's easy. Like when you factor in that, like when most kids come, they think they're coming. I know it's hard for people to believe this, but they think that Tennessee is like cow fields and all this, and all of a sudden they get here and they driving from the airport, and you roll down by the river and you see downtown, which has got multiple buildings that are pretty big, and it feels like a city, not rural America,
not Auburn.
Yeah, well, there you go. And so like I think all of a sudden it's like whoa, and I think some kids come in with different expectations, so it kind of blows them away with just the city in general. Staffs do a good job. Obviously, the facilities sell themselves. Tradition, stadium's big. All the academic side of stuff, all that plays in, and Tennessee's fans have a huge impact. They do. I mean, they'll have a huge impact on guys like Kyler Casper or Carnell Tate or whoever. It doesn't mean they're going to necessarily end up here, but it definitely like gets kids excited to come and take a look at it.
Yeah, it does. I mean, if a kid has a bad time, generally that means he really didn't want to visit. He's doing it out of some obligation. He promised a coach.
And there's been a few of those over the years. They come
absolutely.
Up here.
Yeah, sure. There has been everywhere,
Yeah.
I mean.
Like Preston Williams going to Auburn.
Yeah, and you have, Brady James, the linebacker at LSU, was one of those guys. I mean, he didn't have a good visit, and nobody at Tennessee really enjoyed visiting with him when he was here. But, very rarely do you have those situations happening because everybody knows how to put on a good show, and they do put on a good show. In order to finish the previously proposed renovations to Lindsey Nelson Stadium, will they all be completed by the time the stadium opens next baseball season? Rob, if you're going to spend $57 million, you're not getting it all done in 1 year.
No, it's not close. I've actually talked to a friend of mine who's involved in the in the new Smokies ballpark downtown, and whose company hopes to be involved in whatever they do at Lindsey Nelson, and we're talking years. It's not, years. I don't think 24.
Yeah, I think you're just going to do it in phases. You got to do things as you go. I just don't think you can get one. When you're doing renovations, you got a lot of work that nobody sees that has to take place for the renovations to happen, as opposed to a brand new construction. And two, you got material concerns, material issues, labor shortages, lots of things involved there. I just don't see that you're going to break. You're not even going to break ground on anything until sometime late summer at the earliest of fall. So I don't see any way that you're going to get everything done in one off season with renovations to Lindsey Nelson Stadium. Final question, and we're out the gate here. This comes from Brooks, 1972. Do you see much transfer movement in the portal in the spring, or do you think the guys heading that direction made that move in January? Not asking for names, rather looking at space we may need to be needing to fill. Look, you're going to see movement everywhere around the country. In January, you're going to see movement everywhere around the country in May.
Anytime they can.
Yeah, Tennessee's not going to be immune to that. That they'll have somebody, I'm sure, go in the portal once spring practice is over. That's a given. And then Tennessee will be active in the portal trying to get guys in. Same thing's going on with basketball, right, Rob? You've had a couple of movement. You may not be done with movement there, and Tennessee's out there trying to plug the holes from the movement that they probably expected from guys who have moved to this point. So, I think in the spring you don't have as many surprises probably. You know what I mean? I think you kind of have an idea if a guy's going to go more than you do maybe at the end of a regular season if a guy, kind of surprises you that way. But I think if you're doing a good job as a coach, Rob, you got a pretty good handle on your roster management. Movement shouldn't be stunning to you at this point.
I was going to say I would wager to guess that there are very few surprises of guys going to the transfer portal in either sport. Probably, more so in basketball. I can promise you that nobody's gone to the portal, these past couple of years when it's been a big thing. And basketball has been a remote surprise to the coaches' staff. And it might be a little different in football because you're talking about 85 kids. But I bet there have been very few times where a coach has jaw has just hit the floor. It's like, man, I can't believe, Joe Bob's leaving.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say about the spring that's different, Austin, in my opinion, you may disagree with me here. I think there's more unknowns in basketball because they're leaving at the end of the regular season. So kids are, in terms of options out there, it's a little more unknown. I think when football kids leave in the spring, at the end of spring, I think those guys, when they go in the portal, have a pretty good idea of where they're going, even more than they did when they went in the portal in December or 1st of January. Maybe I'm wrong there, but I think those kids some of those kids have a better idea of where they're going late in the spring. You're looking at me like I got two heads.
No, I think no matter whether you go in December or May, like I think the best players that go in have an idea. Like I just think that there's so much, faux tampering going on where like the prospects on your own team or the players on your own team call player X that they know and hey, we need a linebacker. I think that happens both times because I just think there's just so much kind of faux tampering going on. I don't know.
So the most talented guys know where they're going. The guys who aren't as talented are more
the one thing about
unknown.
The one thing Rob said, talking about the basketball, Tennessee had all those kids go in the portal last year. Like the Keyshawn Lawrence's, the Henry Toes, but that was off of coaching change. Like no, I'm with Rob. No one has went in the portal this offseason that left the staff going, oh my God, we can't believe we lost that kid.
Yeah, I just think that, again, roster management, if you're established as a coach and you're not a brand new coach coming in.
Here's the other thing. We talked about this yesterday. A lot of kids have been rumored for the portal in the last 6 months. I'm yet to see any of them that went in there that you're like, man, that one surprises me. Like sometimes you're not caught off guard, but like I think some of these kids are seeing too, like there's a ton of kids in the portal. If I don't have anything lined up beforehand, I don't need to go anywhere.
Yeah, Rob, I read somewhere where there's like 1,200 basketball kids in the portal right now.
Life here is pretty good, like that. Even if I'm not playing.
Yeah, it's just you got to be careful. You get yourself in a position where you're not getting 4 meals, 5 meals on a game day on a road trip at some smaller school. You better have a pretty good idea of where you stand and where you're going when you move around, because there's going to be some basketball kids again looking for a place that don't have a place to play, but because there's more people in the portal than there's spots for at the level that these kids are wanting to transfer to. So we'll see what happens with that. We'll keep close tabs on the portal. Obviously, baseball this weekend, football scrimmage on Saturday. Plenty of coverage of all that coming up at Volquest.com. But that's going to do it for this edition of the Volquest.com Mailbag Podcast presented by Smoky Mountain Organics. For Rob Lewis and Austin Price, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your Thursday, everybody.
You've been listening to the Volquest Mailbag Podcast every week right here on Volquest.